Hi everyone, thanks for joining my session. My name is Nimrod Geva and I manage QuizCon's product group. And today I'm going to speak about QuizCon Forms, which is our solution for forms and mobile in SharePoint environment. Now before I start showing the product, I'd like to mention some challenges that made us design our product the way it is. And I'll be comparing to InfoPath that also represents other form designers that what we call are external to SharePoint. Now, the first challenge that we saw with all the existing form designers are that these designers are designed for power users, for technical users. Looking at it, any form designer like InfoPath, you can clearly see that a business user cannot go near such a tool to create his forms by himself. Take InfoPath for example, it looks like a bit like Visual Studio, like a developer tool. Even experienced SharePoint implementers cannot start work with InfoPath unless they go through a serious training. So this is a barrier, which means once a company starts working with InfoPath, it means it must hire a more expensive team of InfoPath experts, technical people, and it means that they create a bottleneck by design because a small group of InfoPath experts need to create forms for the entire organization. Another challenge that we saw is that although InfoPath and other designers work with SharePoint, they are not really SharePoint, which means you don't get to benefit from SharePoint extensibility features in those tools. For example, let's say you work with InfoPath and you need to have a new type of field. In SharePoint Forms, it's actually quite easy because SharePoint is extensible. It allows you to develop new custom columns or to buy a custom column from a third party, from a vendor. This doesn't work in InfoPath. InfoPath comes with its own set of fields, with its own sets of controls, and this is what you have. It's not extensible. And this is also true to any other SharePoint feature. You cannot extend these other tools with SharePoint features because this is not SharePoint. This is a separate external tool. And the last challenge is the cost of ownership, which relates to the previous bullets that I mentioned. If you need experts to create your forms, it means that the cost of ownership is higher because you must hire more expensive technical people or work with vendors to create your forms. So what is different with QuizCon Forms? So QuizCon Forms was designed for business users. You won't see here another overwhelming, rich designer. What you will see are simple to use setting pages. So this tool is designed for business user. As we see it, every site owner can start create his team's forms without any need to wait or ask for the help of any form expert. Another thing that is very different is the fact that QuizCon Forms is a 100% SharePoint native product, which means we did not implement an external designer that produces forms that replace the SharePoint forms. What we did do is we simply enhanced the existing SharePoint list forms. So from a user perspective, users will keep working with the very well-known SharePoint list forms, but what they will see is that these forms now appear as if they are on steroids. They have many more many additional features, but it's the same good old SharePoint list forms. So your deployment is a lot quicker. You don't have to teach anyone new technology, and of course the cost of ownership is a lot lower than having to hire a team of form experts or work with vendors to create your forms. And last point I'd like to mention, QuizCon forms come in several editions, but we also thought about the organizations, the smaller companies, or simply organizations that do not need all the QuizCon forms features. So QuizCon forms is built in a robust way, which means it is actually a bunch of, you can look at it as a bunch of separate add-ons that you can buy only the specific feature that you need, and you don't have to buy the entire QuizCon forms package. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is show you a couple of demos. I didn't prepare any pre-designed fancy looking forms. What I'm going to do is quite the opposite. I want to show you how the product works from scratch, so you'll see the real experience of working with QuizCon forms once you start working with it. I'll be using the QuizCon forms app in some examples and the Full Trust in other examples, so you'll see both versions of the product. My first example is, I think, demonstrates one of the most important features of forms is the ability to make the form context sensitive, which means hide, show, or disable fields not just according to who you are, but also according to your actions. So according to your selections in some fields, suddenly you see or don't see other part of the form. Okay, so I have here an Office 365 site, and I'll be using the IT help desk list. And I want just to show you this list before I start working on it. So some of the fields here are used by the user who opens a support ticket, like what's the problem, the report date, description, and some of the fields are used by the helpdesk engineer when he resolves the issue, like issue status and resolution details and so on. Now, what I'm going to do now, I want to make this form a bit dynamic. You can see I have here a category field where the user reports if he is experiencing a hardware issue, a software issue, or just has a how-to question. And below I have the hardware type field and the software type field. Now, of course, I want the hardware type field to be displayed only if I select the hardware category. And if I select the software category, I'd like the hardware field to be hidden, and instead I'd like the software type field to show. So depending on my selection in the category field, the hardware type field and software type field should be displayed or hidden accordingly. So let's see how we do it. I'm going to the list ribbon, and once you install QuizCon forms, you have the QuizCon forms ribbon button. Let's click the ribbon button, and this will take us to the QuizCon forms landing page. Here we have all the options. I'm going to select the dynamic column permission. This is the place where we can show, hide, or disable fields according to dynamic conditions. So let's start setting some rules. I want to, if you remember, I'd like to show or hide the hardware type field according to some logic. And first of all, I'm going to choose where I want to do it. So I want to hide or show this field in all the list forms. And I want to hide this field. And when do I want to hide this field? I want to hide this field if category is not equal to hardware. Only if category equals to hardware, only then show the field. And I'm clicking apply. And this generates a rule, a logic rule. And it's written in a human readable language. So you can see hide hardware type in these forms, not always, when category current value is not equal to hardware. And the same thing I'm going to do with the software type field. So software type field, let's add a rule. And I want this rule to be applied in all the forms. And the rule says hide this field if category is not equal to software. And there we have two rules. And I'm going to click apply and let's see how it works. So let's go back to the list. I'll open the list in a new tab so we'll be able to switch between the tabs quickly. And let's create a new item. So now we do not see the hardware type field and the software type field because category is not equal to hardware or to software. Once we select hardware, we see the hardware type, right? And once we select software, we see the software type instead. The hardware type becomes hidden. So as you can see, it is very easy to set up dynamic rules that make your entire form very dynamic. Now, as you saw, I made this happen according to some logic criteria that depends on the value of other fields that the user selects. Of course, you can add to your condition the current user. So you can say, I want this to happen only if the user belongs to some group also. So you can create very dynamic, very complex rules to make your form very dynamic. Okay, next thing I'd like to show you are field constraints. Field constraints allow you to configure rules that validate your form before it is saved. And I'm going to show you a few examples. Okay, so back to the IT help desk list. Let's look again at the new item form. And as you see, we have the issue status field and the resolution details. So resolution details is where the help desk engineer should provide the exact details about how he resolved the issue. And this field, we would like to make it mandatory, but not always. Because if the issue is not resolved, there is no data to provide in this field. But we want this field to be mandatory only if issue status is selected to be closed. So only when a support engineer closes an issue, only then I want to make this field mandatory. So it's kind of, we want this field to be conditionally mandatory, which is a dynamic behavior. So let's implement it. What I'm going to do now is go back to the, let's click cancel here in the field permission. I'm going back to the KWIZ Forms landing page, and this time I'm going to choose the field constraints setting page. You will see that it's very similar to the previous page. It's all about logic rules. Okay, so let's select the resolution details field and let's set up a new rule. And as you can see, you have many operators that allow you to validate your fields. For this field, I want it to be mandatory. So let's see if I have something like, yeah, is not empty. And this is the error message that will be displayed if I try to save the form when it's empty. Of course, I can change it, but I want this to be validated not always, only if issue status is equal to closed. And let's click apply, and there we have our new rule. Validate that resolution details is not empty, and do it only when issue status is equal to closed. And if it's not valid, show this message. Okay? Let's go back to the new item form, and let's put some data here, and let's change the issue status to closed and click save. So of course we have here resolution details is a required field. Of course, if I change it to any other value, I don't get this validation message. I have another validation message for a mandatory field that I didn't provide any details for. Now, another thing that I wanted to show you about field constraints, and of course, like field permission, you can create dynamic conditions that also include and or and depend on other things like who's the current user or the content type or any other value of another field. So you can create really dynamic conditions to when to validate your fields. Let's look at another field. Another thing that I want to show you are more complex conditions. Let's look, for example, at some text field. And as you saw, there are many operators. One of the operators that I wanted to show you is matches pattern. Matches pattern allow me to validate textual fields against predefined custom patterns, and the product comes with some a couple of ready-to-use patterns such as date formats or email addresses, IP addresses, phone numbers, postal codes, and so on. And in addition to this, you can create your own patterns using regular expressions. Now, here you see all the patterns that the product comes with. And as you can see, these are simply regular expressions. This, of course, requires a more technical knowledge in regular expressions. The nice thing about it is that you can create your own new regular expressions. And of course, they will be also saved here, which is a hidden library that you can share, so you get to share custom patterns with all other users who are creating forms. Okay, next thing I'd like to talk about are field groups. Field groups allow you to gather your fields into groups that are displayed as tabs or as sections. This allows you, this is very useful when you have a long form with many fields and you want to make it more readable, easier to work with. So let's go back to my IT help desk list and let's have a look at the new item form again. So the form is not so long, but we'll use it for this example. So let's say I want to make my form display two tabs. One tab for the end users who are reporting issues. So they will see what's the problem, reported date, description, reported by, category, and so on. And the other tab will be for the support engineers who are resolving the issues. So they will see the assigned to, issue status, and resolution details fields. So let's do it. Going back to my KWIZ Forms settings page. This time I'm going to choose the field group / tabs setting page. Okay, before creating any tabs, I want to show you something that really helps making a form more clear. If you remember, SharePoint displays always its fields in one layout. The layout is one field in a row where the caption appears left to the field. Let's say I want to have a multi-column form. Let's say I want to have 2 columns in my form. This will take me just 5 seconds. All I have to do is say I want my form to have 2 columns, and also I'd like the captions of each field to appear above the field. Let's see how it looks. Clicking OK, apply, and let's refresh the form. Okay, so this is how it looks like. Now I have two columns in my form, and the caption of each field appears above the field. This is another way to avoid very long forms, because SharePoint doesn't really use the page properly. You have a lot of space, but it only uses one field per row. So what we do here, we can create forms without any scroll bars that display a lot more fields. Now let's continue with the tabs that I mentioned before. So let's now create two field groups. To create field groups, you go under the groups section and click the new group. And let's give it a name, issue details. And as you can see, it inherits the number of columns per row from the section above. But you can change it, so you can have one tab that has one field per row, and maybe other tab that has 3 field per row. So it's quite flexible. Now you have here an empty grid. This is the place where you start adding your rows and fields. So let's add a new row, and I have 2 columns. And now let's click the plus sign and say, okay, first field I want to see is what's the problem. And next to it, I want to see the field details or description. Yeah. And let's add another row, and let's have here category, and let's have here the hardware type, and below I'll have the software type. And do I need anything else? I think it's okay. Okay, and as you see, I have conditions here. It's the same like all other setting pages. So I can set up a condition that says display this tab only if some condition occurs. So again, this is very dynamic. One user, and if a field equals something, will see 2 tabs, and another user will see only 1 tab. So it's very dynamic. Let's add the second tab and call it resolution details. And this tab, as I said, is for the support engineers. So what they need to see here is only the assigned to field and issue status. Where's the issue status? Yeah, and the resolution details. And you know what? I'd like the resolution details to be a wider field. So I'm gonna click the cell itself and then go to column span and make it 2. So this field takes 2 columns. So it will be wider than the other fields. And let's click apply and let's see how it looks. So let's refresh this page. Okay, so here we have 2 tabs. We see the issue details tab and the resolution details, and you see that the resolution details is wider than the other. It takes the entire column. And of course, if we select category, suddenly the hardware type appears, but if we select software, we'll see the software type field. And this is a multi-column field. So you don't have to mess with drag and drop and designing your page in pixels and all this technical stuff. You just let us know which field you want to see and which one you want to be wider or take the entire row, and we will render it for you. So again, this is for non-technical users who don't need to mess with pixels, HTML tables, or any other technical stuff. I also wanted to show you, this is the tabs rendering. You can also select different type of rendering called accordion, which displays collapsible accordion sections. Let's refresh to see how it looks like. Okay, so this is a different type of rendering. Also, I wanted to show you what happens. Let's go back to tabs for a second. Click apply and refresh again. And let's say I'm trying to save the form. So because we have tabs, this time, in addition to seeing the error, the validation error below the field, you also see a panel, validation summary panel above the tabs, because you might have several validation errors in several tabs, so you won't know where exactly are these issues. So what we do, we show a summary of all the issues in this validation summary panel above all tabs, and also tabs that have issues show in red exclamation mark. That is also an indication for you, just for you to know you have a problem here with some fields. Next feature I'd like to show you is called dynamic default values. Now you can say SharePoint already has default values, and that's correct. We offer more dynamic options for this capability. For example, you can set up different default values for different users. So if one user creates a new item, he will see one set of default values, but when a different user that maybe belongs to a different group opens the same new item form, he can see different default values. Another dynamic option is to configure a field default value that is based on another field's default value. For example, you can say, I want the end date, the due date field default value to be equal to the start date's default value plus 5 days. And finally, you can set up default values for field types that SharePoint does not provide default values for. For example, the person column type or the lookup column type, both of them, you cannot set up default values in SharePoint out of the box. So let's see a small example. This time I'm going to use a document library. Now, if you remember, a document has a name and also has a title. And when you upload a document, you end up having an empty title value, while in most of the times you would like the title to be equal to the name. So let's create a rule that makes the title's default value equal to the name of the document. So let's go to default values, settings page, and create a simple rule. And again, it's the same logic. You have fields and rules. So let's pick the title field and say I want it to be equal to the name field. And as you can see, in order to use another field, you just need to use brackets. It's like a token. You can also use today or now or current user. So all of these are tokens that you can use. And let's click apply. Okay, so we have a simple rule that says set the title's default value to the name field. Okay, so let's go to the document library and upload a new document. Okay, so let's click new. Oh, sorry. Let's click upload. And let's select a file. And let's take some user guide here. And click OK. And as you can see, the title's default value got the value of the name of the file. And let's, I don't know, pick a product, and that's it. Next two features I'd like to talk about are the multi-row forms and cascaded fields, and I'll be using the common example of expense reports. My scenario relies on the following data model. I have two fields. First one is called expense reports and the other one is called expense details, where each expense report may include several details. So we have a one-to-many relationship between these two lists. Now before I show you the configuration, let me show you the end result. So clicking new item, I get this multi-tab form. We have a branch and department drop-down field. These are cascading lookup fields. So when there's no selected branch, the department drop-down shows nothing, no items. If I select any of these branches, I will see only the departments that are located in the selected branch. Okay, so these are cascaded fields. Let's go to the second tab, and this is the repeating rows column. This custom column enables me to connect to another list. In our case, it's the expense details. And each row in this form will be saved as an item in expense details. So this is how we connect one expense report to multiple expense details. Of course, you can add additional rows. This is configurable if you want to allow your users to add additional rows. And you can update your details, of course. Okay, so how is this configured? So going back to the KWIZ Forms landing page, we have these two settings. One is called cascading lookup and the other one repeating rows. These two are part of the professional edition in the app or in the Pro Plus edition in the full trust solution. Let me show you the cascading lookup configurations. So if you remember, we had a branch and department. So let's go to the department. Department is more interested because it is filtered by the selected branch. So this is how you configure it. You select a target site and a list, which means you can create lookup or cascading lookup fields that link to a remote list. It doesn't have to be on the same site. And under select filtering settings, this is where I say, yeah, I want this filter option to be based on another column. And this is where I connect my my drop-down, in this case, the department, to the filtering branch field. Now let me show you the repeating rows configuration. So you'll see the settings that you can change. So you will see the settings that you can change. I can create new ones, but I already have these expense details. This is the repeating row field that you just saw. So by default it displays 3 rows, but of course you can change it. You can allow or disallow user to add rows, and then you decide which columns you want to display from the remote list, which is the expense details. So these are the columns that I chose to display, and under configure totals and preview you see the result grid, and you can also add total functions. And in this example, as you saw, I have a summary total function under the cost. And of course, each total function is also appears as a column in the list, so you can use it in views. Very similar, by the way, to InfoPath. Okay, moving on to a more advanced topic. Many times we need to include external data in our forms. Such external data may be used as a default value or as a part of a logic condition. External value encapsulates a web request. So as an administrator, you can create an external value, which is actually just a call to some URL. The URL may link to any web accessible source, so it can be any Java, PHP, or whatever. We don't care about the technology as long as it's a valid URL. And you can include in this web request also dynamic parameters. So you can include column values of the current item or the current user and so on. And the return value is used like any other manual value. So for users who are using external values, they are not aware that these are actually web requests. For them, it's just a value like any other manual value. In addition to the ability to use any web accessible sources with custom URLs, KWIZ Forms includes some ready-to-use services that allow you to access remote SharePoint lists, SQL or Oracle database, or even Excel files that are located in some accessible web server. Okay, I'd like to show you a quick demo of using an external value. So I have here an orders list. Let's create a new order, and I have the list of products, and every time I select a product, available quantity field gets a different value. Now these values are taken from as an external source. This is a SQL Server database called CRM, and I have here the inventory table, and you can see I have these exact three products. Each has its available quantity in the inventory. So what happens here is that every time I select a product, available quantity field reloads its value from this external source. So let's see how this was implemented. So I'm going to KWIZ Forms default value settings page, and it looks a bit different than what you saw before because this is the full solution. Before I showed you the Office 365 app. So let's see the settings that we have here. We have one rule, and this rule is for the available quantity field, and its default value is not a manual value, but it is an external value. And you can see here the value. It's called get product inventory, and it takes one dynamic parameter which is called product. So this looks like a function, and the way I selected it is by clicking this picker. And when you click the picker, you see all the available external values that someone else created. I have no idea how it was created. So I see only one external value that matches my field type, which is a number, and it's called get product inventory, so the name is descriptive, and it gets one dynamic parameter, and it expects to get the product. And this is exactly the name of my product column. So every time I select a product, the value of the selected product will be passed on to this function, to this external value. And that's it. I don't know what it does behind the scenes as a user, as one who creates the form, and I couldn't care less. For me, it's a black box called get product inventory. It gets a parameter which is the selected product, and it brings it back a number which is the available quantity. Also, I checked this property called reload value when user changes other field values, because I want this default value to be reloaded again and again every time a user changes the product selection. So every time I change the product, this value is fetched from the external value. So this is the experience as a business user, as one who only creates form but doesn't really care how this external value was created. For me, it's a function. Now let's switch hats and be the administrator who created this external value. And this does require more technical knowledge because you need to know how to connect to various external systems. So to create external values, you need to click the Manage External Values link. So let's click it. So here you see all the available external values. So let's have a look at this one, get product inventory. This is the one we just used. So I'm clicking the external value and let's see its properties. So it has a descriptive name that I gave it and some description, so end users will understand what this external value returns. And this is the heart of the external value. Actually, as I mentioned before, an external value is a URL. And it can be any URL. This URL, I didn't type it. I just used one of the built-in services. I click this one, get value from SQL Server, and it gives me this entire URL. The only thing that I had to change is this parameter, which is called connection name, and I gave it the name CRM. CRM is the connection string that I have in my web config, pointing to this CRM database. There's another parameter that this external value, this built-in service gets. It's called command, and here I just entered the SQL sentence, which says select available quantity from this table where product ID equals the parameter product. So actually you may notice that this service, get value from SQL's database, actually runs a SQL query. So it can be also an update query. So I can use external values not just to retrieve data from external sources, but also to update data in external sources. Another important property is the cacheability property. And this may have a big impact over the performance of your forms. Imagine you have a big form with about 20-30 fields, and each one of them loads an external value from some external source. This means that every time a user creates a new item, about 20 web requests are triggered to load all the external default values into your form. But this is not always necessary, because sometimes you have external values that do not change very often, so you may cache them. And this is where you can say, I don't want this external value to be retrieved every time a user opens a new item form. I want it to be cached for an hour, for 5 hours, or for several minutes, and this means the cached value will be used, making your form a lot faster. And of course, this will be noticed only when you have many fields that require external values. Next feature is called custom actions. Custom actions are part of KWIZ Forms Enterprise Edition. And with custom action, you can implement use cases without any need for a workflow designer. Instead, you work with a much simpler settings page, very similar to the other KWIZ Forms settings pages. A custom action allows you to automate a series of activities that will be executed in one shot. And for example, you can display customized ribbon buttons, auto-populate fields, and many other activities. Okay, so let's see a quick demo. I have here a task list. Let's see how many mouse clicks and page refreshes are required for me to simply close a task. So let's say I'm viewing this task number 3 and I want to close it. So I need to edit the item. I need to update a few fields like percentage complete and task status, and then I need to click save, which is another click and another page refresh. How about we do all of that in one shot, in a single ribbon button click? So let's create now a new ribbon button, which is called close task. And I can target this new ribbon button to specific users or groups. And I can also set a logical condition to when this ribbon button should be displayed. So my condition is, first of all, I want to display this ribbon button only when the task is not completed. And also, I'd like to show it only to the user to whom this task is assigned. So these are my two conditions. Next, I want to configure what should happen when a user clicks this button. So I want to update the percentage complete field, and I want to update the task status field and make it equal completed. Okay, so these are the two fields that I'm going to update. And as you can see, if I had some tabs in this form, I could show several tabs, and if I had workflows here, I could also trigger several workflows. Finally, when all these activities are done, I want to redirect the user back to the default view, and I can use any URL here to redirect the user when this action is completed, or to use one of these available tokens. So I'm going to redirect the user back to the default value, to the default view. Let's click apply and see how this works. Okay, so let's look at task number 4. I should see a custom ribbon button. I don't see any ribbon button because one of the conditions was that the task is assigned to me, but this task is not assigned to me. It's assigned to Sales 1 user, and I'm the administrator. So of course, I shouldn't be able to close the task. Let's open task number 2, which is assigned to me. And there we have it. We have the close task ribbon button. And currently there's no value in the percentage complete field, and task status is not started. Let's click close task. And now this task is completed. And if you want to see, yeah, the percentage complete is 100 and it's completed. So this way you can automate a series of activities into and have it all triggered in a single ribbon button click. Okay, we reached the end of this session. I would just like to mention that we also have QWIZCom Mobile as part of QWIZCom Forms Enterprise Edition, which exposes all the features that I showed you in this session to handheld devices. You can download the QWIZCom Forms product from our website. There's a free trial version, so you can check out the product, or you can contact us and ask for a private sandbox. In case you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at sales@quizcom.com. Thanks again. Bye-bye.